You ever have one of those moments when time slows down? When someone says something so sharp it cuts right through your chest, and all you can do is smile like it didn't hurt? Yeah. That's exactly how I felt that night. It was supposed to be a celebration. Michael, my fiancé, had just gotten a big promotion at the investment firm he worked for, and his parents were hosting a small dinner to celebrate his future. Only, it didn't feel like our future they were celebrating. It felt like his, and I was just an awkward guest who'd somehow wandered into the wrong home. The table was beautiful, all crystal glasses, expensive silverware, candles glowing soft gold across plates that probably cost more than my car. I tried to fit in. I wore a cream dress, simple, elegant, the kind of thing I thought would say, "I belong here." But as I sat there across from Michael's mother, Catherine, I could feel her eyes trace every inch of me, judging, measuring, dismissing. "So, Janet," she said, smiling, but not the kind of smile that reached her eyes. "Remind me again, what is it you do exactly?" I swallowed, forcing myself to stay calm. "I work at the bank," I said. "Commercial accounts. I handle small business portfolios mostly, but I'm also—" "Ah," she interrupted softly, still stirring her wine. "A teller." Michael laughed awkwardly. "No, Mom, Janet's a senior associate. She's been with the company for 5 years. "Oh," her tone lifted, but only slightly. "Well, that's stable." She looked around the table, as if making sure everyone heard that word stable, like it was both a compliment and a warning. Her husband cleared his throat. "That's good, dear. Stability is important, though Michael's world is, well, a bit different." Different, that word echoed in my mind the rest of the night. It wasn't the first time Catherine had made me feel like I wasn't enough, but this was something else. There was something deliberate about her tone, like she was marking her territory, letting me know her son was part of a world I'd never truly belonged to. After dinner, when everyone drifted to the living room for drinks, she cornered me near the staircase. I remember every detail, the sound of the piano, the way her perfume filled the air, expensive, floral, suffocating. She leaned in, her voice low. "Janet," she said, "you seem like a lovely girl, truly, but Michael comes from a certain kind of family. We've worked hard to maintain a reputation. I just worry that—" She paused, smiling faintly. "That kind of background might be difficult for you to adapt to." That was her polite way of saying, "You're not one of us." I tried to hold my ground. "With all due respect, Mrs. Parker," I said, "Michael and I love each other, that's what matters." Her eyes softened just for a second, but then that smile again. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, "love is a beautiful thing, but it doesn't pay for private schools or penthouses." I didn't respond. I couldn't, because if I opened my mouth, I wasn't sure if I'd scream or cry. When we got in the car later, Michael noticed the silence. "Hey," he said, resting his hand on mine. "You okay?" I stared out the window, watching the city lights blur past. "Your mom doesn't like me." He sighed. "She's just protective. She's always like that. Don't take it personally." But I did, because it wasn't just disapproval, it was contempt. And what hurt most was that Michael didn't stand up for me. Not once. That night I went home alone, told him I was tired. But I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch in the dark, staring at my hands, wondering when exactly love had started to feel like an audition. Over the next few weeks, things got worse. Suddenly, Michael was too busy to meet for dinner. His calls were shorter, his texts more distant. I'd ask what was wrong, and he'd just say, "Work, been crazy." But I knew it wasn't work, it was her. Catherine had gotten into his head. One evening, I got a call from him. His tone was off, too polite, too formal. "Janet," he said, "can we talk?" Those 4 words, "can we talk," they always mean one thing. We met at our favorite restaurant, the one where we'd had our first date. But the moment I walked in, I knew something was different. He didn't stand to hug me. He didn't even smile. "I don't know how to say this," he began, "but maybe we're not in the same place anymore." I froze. What does that mean? He sighed, eyes darting away. "My parents, they think we're rushing things, and honestly, I've been thinking the same. You deserve someone who can give you more stability, more." I laughed. I couldn't help it. More stability. You think I'm not stable enough. Janet. No, say it, I snapped. Your mom thinks I'm beneath you, and you agree, don't you? He looked down at his drink, didn't answer. That was answer enough. I stood up, tears burning behind my eyes. I hope you get everything your mother wants for you, Michael, and I hope it keeps you warm at night. I walked out before he could reply. When I got home that night, I sat in my car for nearly an hour, gripping the steering wheel, shaking. That's when her voice replayed in my head, that same smug, cold tone. Love doesn't pay for penthouses. I whispered to myself through gritted teeth, neither does pride, Catherine, but I'll make sure you remember mine. That was the moment everything changed. I didn't know how or when, but I swore I'd rebuild myself brick by brick. Not for Michael, not even to prove her wrong for me. Because that's what they never understood. I didn't need their world. I was going to build my own. When you hit rock bottom, it's funny how quiet everything gets. The world keeps moving, people keep talking, but inside it's just silence. That's where I was after Michael left, not crying anymore, not angry, just quiet. For weeks, I went to work like a machine. Smile, numbers, deadlines, reports. At the bank, no one knew what had happened, and I didn't want them to, because pity is a poison that looks like kindness, and I'd had enough of that for a lifetime. But something shifted in me during those weeks. It started with small choices. I stopped checking his social media. I stopped rereading old messages. I even stopped avoiding the places that reminded me of him. Instead, I poured every ounce of energy into my work, not because I wanted to forget him, but because I needed to remember myself. A few months later, my manager, Karen, called me into her office. She was tough, direct, the kind of woman who didn't believe in luck, only in work. Janet, she said, adjusting her glasses, how would you feel about taking on a new client portfolio? I blinked. Really, what kind of clients? Real estate investment group. They've got a growing portfolio, commercial spaces, small developments. Their current advisor's leaving, and I think you're ready. I tried to stay calm, but my heart was racing. Thank you, I said. I won't let you down. I know you won't, she replied. You've got something most people don't. You've got focus. She didn't know it, but that word, focus, became my mantra. Every late night, every weekend, every small win, it was fuel. I started learning everything I could about real estate finance, development loans, property markets. I spent hours reading, taking online courses, talking to clients who knew more than I did. That's how I met Daniel Harper, a soft-spoken but brilliant property developer. He'd come in for a consultation, and by the end of the meeting, he asked, "Have you ever thought about moving into real estate yourself? You've got a good head for this." I laughed. Me? No, I'm just a banker. He smiled. You're not just anything. People who see patterns like you do, they build things. Those words stuck with me. That night, I opened a blank notebook and wrote at the top of the page, build something. Over the next year, things started to click. I got promoted. Twice. I began handling higher-level accounts, attending meetings with investors, and even consulting on real estate financing models. My confidence grew, not loud or flashy, but steady. Quiet power. I started saving aggressively. Every bonus, every extra commission I treated like seed money. My small apartment, the same one I'd cried in after the breakup, became my war room, vision boards, spreadsheets, market maps. Every night I'd light a candle, pour a glass of wine, and build a dream no one could laugh at. Then, one afternoon, fate decided to add a little irony to the mix. I was in a meeting with Daniel's team, reviewing a potential partnership, when he said, "We're acquiring a property downtown, an older firm that's merging with us. Their new financial director will be joining soon. You might know the family, the Parkers." I froze. Parkers, as in Michael's family. I forced a polite smile. Yes, I've heard the name. Daniel didn't notice the tension. Their son's running the finance side now, but it's his mother who really pulls the strings, from what I hear. Of course it was, Catherine Parker, the queen behind the curtain. I left that meeting calm on the outside, but my mind was racing. I didn't want revenge. Not yet. But I did want growth. And if life was handing me a front row seat to the empire that once judged me, I wasn't going to waste it. The next 2 years were a blur of work and strategy. I launched my own consulting agency, a small but growing financial advisory firm specializing in property investment. It started humbly, just me and one assistant, but word spread fast. Clients liked that I listened, that I didn't act like I was above them, even when I was smarter than half the boardrooms I walked into. By year 3, my company, J. Monroe Consulting, had expanded to 3 offices and managed millions in client assets. And somewhere along the line, I realized I was happy, truly happy. Not the kind of happiness that depends on approval, the kind that's built from survival. Then one evening, I got a message from an old college friend. "Hey, Janet, didn't you used to date Michael Parker? Saw his mom's company in the news. Rough year for them." I clicked the article. Parker Holdings faces major financial setback amid market shift. I read every word. And I'll admit it, a part of me smiled. The same Catherine Parker who had once said I wasn't good enough was now trying to save her company from collapse. 2 weeks later, my secretary buzzed into my office. "There's a Mrs. Parker here to see you. No appointment." I froze. Catherine Parker. "Yes, ma'am. She says it's urgent." My heart pounded. I wasn't ready for this, not like this, but I told her to send her in. When the door opened, it was like time folded in on itself. She looked smaller. Still elegant, still composed, but thinner. Tired. There was something in her eyes I'd never seen before, humility. "Janet," she said softly, "you look well." I smiled. "I am, how are you?" She exhaled, shoulders sinking. "Not great, to be honest. I wouldn't be here if I wasn't desperate." I motioned for her to sit. "What can I do for you, Mrs. Parker?" She hesitated. "I don't know if you've heard, but our company's been struggling. Michael, he's no longer involved. I'm trying to hold things together, but our advisory firm dropped us last month. Someone suggested I speak to you." It took everything in me not to laugh. This was the woman who'd once looked me in the eye and said I wasn't good enough. And now she was sitting across from me, asking for help. I leaned back, measured, calm. "I see, and what exactly are you hopping for?" "A restructuring plan, access to new investors, someone who can guide us through the storm." She swallowed hard. "Janet, I know I don't have the right to ask, but I've heard you're the best." Her voice broke on that last word. And that's when I realized this wasn't revenge anymore. This was balance. Life, in its strange, poetic way, had brought her right back to my doorstep. I folded my hands and said quietly, "I'll look into your case, Mrs. Parker. But first, I think we should discuss what it really means to be good enough." Her eyes lifted, shame, regret, maybe even respect. And just like that, the power shifted. When Catherine left my office that day, I sat still for a long time. The silence in the room was thick, heavy, like even the air knew something cosmic had just shifted. I could still hear her voice echoing in my mind. "I've heard you're the best." The irony was almost poetic. The same woman who once told me I'd hold Michael back was now asking me to save her legacy. But there was something deeper in her tone, not pride, not manipulation, not even desperation. It was fear, and despite everything, I understood it. Because I'd been there once too, scared, uncertain, trying to hold myself together while everything I'd built was falling apart. So that night, I didn't celebrate. I didn't call a friend or pour a drink. I sat by my window, city lights reflecting on my glass, and whispered to myself, "This isn't revenge, this is justice." A week later, I walked into Parker Holdings headquarters, been there years ago as Michael's girlfriend. Back then, I'd sat in their marble lobby, legs crossed, trying not to feel out of place. Now I was walking in as a consultant, the woman they needed. It's funny how the same floor can feel completely different when you're walking on your own terms. The receptionist, a young man with perfect hair, looked up. "Good morning, Ms. Monroe. Mrs. Parker is expecting you." "Mrs. Parker," Hearing that title again gave me chills. Except this time, I wasn't walking toward a dinner table where I'd be judged. I was walking toward a boardroom where I'd be heard. When I entered, the room went still. Catherine stood near the window, and for a second, I saw a flicker of recognition cross her face, something between pride and regret. "Janet," she said, forcing a smile. "Thank you for coming." I nodded. "Of course, let's see how we can help your company." Her senior staff, 3 men and 1 woman, looked skeptical. They probably saw me as some outsider, too young, too composed. I'd seen that look before, and it no longer scared me. We dove straight into the numbers. Within minutes, it was clear the company was bleeding cash, bad investments, poor asset management, outdated strategies. "Your biggest problem," I said, sliding my report forward, "isn't the market, it's your structure. You're trying to operate like it's still 10 years ago." One of the men, silver-haired, expensive suit, frowned. "With all due respect, Ms. Monroe, we've been in this business longer than you've been alive." I smiled, calm. "Then you've had longer to make the mistakes I'm about to fix." The room fell silent. Even Catherine didn't interrupt. She just watched me, analyzing, maybe even admiring. For the next 2 hours, I walked them through my restructuring plan, downsizing non-performing assets, introducing new investor partnerships, and renegotiating debts with more favorable terms. By the end, even the skeptic was nodding. When the meeting ended, Catherine said softly, "Janet, could you stay for a moment?" Once the room cleared, she sat down across from me. For the first time since I'd known her, she looked human, not powerful, not polished, just tired. "You've changed," she said quietly. "So have you," I replied. She gave a sad laugh. "I suppose life does that to us." I waited. I wasn't sure if I wanted her apology or if I'd outgrown the need for it. "Janet," she said finally, "I owe you an apology. For everything I said back then, I was wrong about you, about everything." Her voice trembled slightly. "When Michael told me he wanted to marry you, I thought I was protecting him. But really, I was protecting myself. I didn't want to admit that he'd found someone stronger than I was, someone who didn't need the world handed to her." I didn't say anything. Because what do you say when the woman who once broke you now sits across the table, broken herself? After a long pause, I said, "Thank you. That means more than you think." She nodded, eyes glistening. "I know I can't undo what happened, but I hope maybe we can work together, professionally." I met her gaze. "I don't mix emotion with business, Mrs. Parker, but I'll help your company not for you, for the people who depend on it." Her eyes softened. "That's fair." As I gathered my things to leave, she said one last thing. "Michael's not doing well, you know. He made mistakes, big ones." I froze. "I'm sorry to hear that." She nodded. "You really did love him, didn't you?" I took a deep breath. "Yes, but I love myself more now." Over the next few months, I worked closely with Parker Holdings. I was in their offices 3 times a week, helping them stabilize. It was strange, walking through halls that once made me feel small, now commanding them with quiet authority. I built trust with the staff, negotiated deals, and even managed to attract new investors. Slowly, the company started to recover. Catherine was always respectful, almost deferential. But there were moments, small, fleeting ones, where I'd catch her studying me, maybe wondering what kind of woman I might have become if things had gone differently. And sometimes, late at night, I wondered too. Would I have been happier if I'd stayed with Michael? No, because the woman I'd become was forged in the fire of everything they thought I couldn't handle. One evening, as I was leaving the office, my phone rang. It was Catherine. Her voice sounded softer than usual. "Janet," she said, "I wanted to thank you. We've just secured a major investor. You saved us." "I'm glad to hear it," I said, smiling. Would you come to dinner? As a friend, no business, just 2 women who have seen life from both sides." I hesitated. Every part of me wanted to say no, but something in her tone, a kind of humbled sincerity, made me pause. "All right," I said finally. "Dinner, but I'm picking the restaurant." She laughed. Fair enough. When I hung up, I sat in my car, staring at the skyline. Somewhere out there, Michael was living his own story. And me? I was living mine, the one I built, brick by brick, out of every insult, every doubt, every "you're not good enough." And somehow, I realized I wasn't angry anymore, not even a little. When I walked into the restaurant that night, I recognized the sound of the piano before I saw her. Soft, elegant, the kind of music you hear in the background of a place that smells like old money and quiet regret. Catherine was already seated. She'd chosen a corner table, private, with a view of the city skyline glittering against the night. She stood when she saw me. "Janet, you look beautiful." I smiled. "So do you." And for a brief second, it wasn't the woman who once judged me or the woman who later came to me for help. It was just two women, standing at different ends of the same road, meeting in the middle. We ordered wine, the good kind, the one you only open when you've lived long enough to understand patience. At first, we talked business. The company's turnaround, the staff's morale, the new investor. But eventually, the conversation drifted into quieter waters. She said, "You remind me of myself, when I was younger, determined, sharp. I think that's what frightened me most about you." I looked at her surprised, frightened. She nodded. "You were everything I'd wanted to be at your age, confident, capable, unafraid of starting from nothing. And I hated that. I thought if I could make you feel small, maybe I could feel big again." Her words hit harder than I expected, because they weren't cruel. They were honest, raw, human. "People like me," she continued. "We hide behind perfection. Our houses, our family names, our dinner parties, it's all armor. And when you walked into our lives, Janet, you saw through it." I took a slow sip of my wine. "I wasn't trying to threaten you." "I know," she said softly, "but I was too proud to see that then." For a while, we just sat in silence. The kind of silence that isn't awkward, it's healing. Outside, the city lights blurred into streaks of gold, like time itself had slowed down to listen. Finally, she said, "I've wanted to say this for a long time. I'm sorry. For what I said, for what I did, and for what I cost you." I looked at her, really looked at her. Her hair was streaked with silver now, her hands no longer steady. The years had softened her, just as they had strengthened me. And in that moment, I realized something. I didn't need her to regret it, because her judgment didn't define me, it built me. "Catherine," I said gently, "you don't owe me anything. You already gave me something no one else could." She frowned slightly. "What's that?" "A reason to prove myself." She blinked, and for the first time. She smiled, not polite, not rehearsed. Real. Then maybe we both learned something. As dessert arrived, she leaned in. "Our board has been talking. They want to bring you on as a partner, not as a consultant, a permanent position." I laughed softly. "That's tempting, but I've built something of my own now. My company's expanding into property management next quarter." Her eyebrows lifted. "Really?" "Really. We're even finalizing an office in the same district as yours." She smiled. "So I guess you'll be my competition." "Friendly competition," I said. "The kind that makes us both better." We clinked glasses, and it felt like closing a loop, not of revenge, but of respect, because I didn't need to win over her anymore. I'd already won myself. A few days later, I got an envelope at my office. Inside was a handwritten note, elegant cursive on thick ivory paper. "Janet, I once told you that you weren't good enough. You proved that none of us are born with worth. We build it, one choice at a time. Thank you for reminding me what grace looks like when it grows from pain. Catherine Parker." I sat at my desk, holding that letter for a long time, not crying, just breathing, because sometimes closure doesn't come in fireworks. It comes in the quiet acknowledgement that the person who once broke you now respects you. Months later, at a charity gala downtown, I saw her again. She was surrounded by her board, smiling, confident, but when she saw me across the room, she excused herself and walked over. "Janet," she said warmly, "you'll never guess our company's back in profit." "That's great news," I said. "And you?" she asked. I grinned. We just closed a deal on a downtown redevelopment project. She chuckled. So you're still giving me a run for my money? Always. For a second, she reached out, touching my arm. I'm proud of you. And I knew she meant it. That night, driving home through the city, I thought about everything that had happened. How a single cruel sentence, "You're not good enough," had once shattered me, and how, in trying to prove her wrong, I found something far more powerful than revenge: peace. I parked in front of my apartment, looked up at the skyline, and smiled to myself. Because life has a way of coming full circle. Sometimes, the people who once doubted you become the proof of your growth. Sometimes, the woman who said you'd never belong ends up asking to stand beside you. And sometimes, you realize the best kind of revenge is living a life that no longer needs any.